The comic industry news has been coming hot and heavy over the last few days as we're getting ready for a little stand down for Christmas. We've had some interesting announcements from Marvel Comics. We have one of my favorite writers is going to be doing a Carnage series. We've also got the creator of Venom returning to the character, David Michelinie, on a Venom book. Sounds very exciting. And Alex Ross, one of the great cover artists in the comics today, is going to be back on interiors again in a newly announced Marvel Comics graphic novel that's kind of going back to the 80s, feel of when Marvel started their graphic novel program. I'm personally excited for all of these. I think I'll be reading all of them, some of them more excited than the others. But hey, these all have very strong points about them. I'm going to go into details if you are unaware. My name is Wes. I'm your host here at Think Critical YouTube. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and definitely hit the bell for notifications. Now let's get into this news. Let's hit the Venom news first, because this is definitely what I'm most excited for. We're going to get a Venom Year One style story in 2022 from co-creator of Venom, David Michelinie, and it's going to be called Venom Lethal Protector. I imagine you're familiar with that subtitle. And it's going to be David Michelinie and artist Ivan Fiorelli turning back the clock to when Eddie Brock was a despondent newspaper reporter first crossing paths with the symbiote that would become Venom. This is what David Michelinie had to say. Getting to do a multi-issue story with the original Venom was like sitting down to dinner with an old friend who wants to eat your brain for dessert. It was both fun and exciting, and I hope people enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it. And according to Marvel, Venom Lethal Protector isn't just a trip down memory lane, but a hint at what's to come in the future. This is going to be a 5-part miniseries, and Lethal Protector goes on sale March 23rd, 2022. I've got some good and I've got some bad. This list isn't all that long, but as far as the good, I am absolutely loving, and I cannot understate this enough. Like the universe that Marvel's been, it's not really a universe, but these series, these limited series that they're using to go and take these classic versions of their characters, go back essentially 30 years. It feels like they're mostly going back to the 90s and telling these in-continuity stories, like your symbiote Spider-Man from Peter David, Maestro from Peter David. We are getting a lot of these X-Men Legends stories. Those are different writers and artists in there. We know we're getting a Ben Reilly Spider-Man from J.M. DeMatteis. I love all of these. I think these are dope. I find the Marvel Universe at this moment in time to be incredibly frustrating. So these cool little 5-issue miniseries that go back and take place within continuity, but take me out of my frustration zone, they're like a palate cleanser. I love every one of these series. So I think these have been done really, really well. They have not cut out or they have not gone cheap as far as the writing talent. And for the most part, they haven't done it with the artistic talent either. They've all been well illustrated, and they bought some of the best as far as classic Marvel comic book writers associated with the characters. David Michelinie coming back and doing this, Venom Lethal Protector sounds awesome. I really enjoyed these. I think, I bag on Marvel enough, but it feels like they have noticed or they identified a weakness within their publishing strategy, and they said, hey, there are some people that aren't enjoying our disjointed continuity. I imagine they use different words. Let's give them something, an alternative. It's new, but it takes them out of the things that are making them frustrated today. And I think it's genius. And I personally am one of those people, and I'm loving it. And I recommend all those series. So I think this is a great idea, and I'm definitely going to be a customer. The bad. And this might not be a bad. This actually might be a good, but we don't know, just reading from the description. What does this story have anything to do with Lethal Protector? That is a classic Venom story. Of course, Michelinie himself wrote it in 93. But reading the description, it doesn't sound like it's expanding on that or, taking place exactly in that time frame. Of course, it could. It does have the name on it. But if it's called Lethal Protector and it's not associated with that miniseries, I think that's going to turn some people off because they're going to go in to the book with preconceived notions of what it's going to be about, when it's taking place, and what it should be expanding on. And I think that could be a detriment to the title itself. I imagine a majority of Venom fans know that Michelinie wrote that story, So they're, with his name and the name of that miniseries associated with it, they're going to be expecting something like that, but that doesn't sound like what we're going to get. So that could confuse people, and I think it could tarnish some people's enjoyment of the book if they came in with the wrong preconceived notions of what it's going to be. But I'm fully on board. I don't care if it has anything to do with Lethal Protector. I kind of hope it does, but I don't expect it to. So I'm going to be happy, but I hope everyone goes in there, not expecting that fully, because that might not be what you get. The other big news, as most of you know, I am an enormous Ram V fan. Of course, he is the current co-writer on Venom with Al Ewing, and we are going to be getting a Carnage series in 2022. Sounds like it's ongoing. It doesn't sound like it's a miniseries. And of course, Carnage, one of Spider-Man's deadliest foes, is going to be coming back in March with Ram V and artist Francesco Manna, and they're going to team up for this new Carnage title celebrating the 30th anniversary of the character in the Marvel Comics universe. And obviously, as you know, Carnage is normally associated with serial killer Cletus Cassidy. It sounds like, according to the information that we have, that Carnage is going to be leaving Cletus Cassidy behind and searching for a new host with whom to bond. And judging by the state, and according to Ram V himself, it sounds like they are not going to be cutting back on the gore and bloody violence that you would expect with a Carnage series. This is what Ram V himself had to say. This Carnage story is very likely to become the most twisted thing I've ever written. The killer symbiote has gone through some pretty significant changes in recent times, and I've been left with an opportunity to do something new and inventive with the character and the kind of stories you might expect to find in a Carnage book. Ram V continued, "This is my kind of horror, as frightening in its implications as it is on the page. This is a devilish, scary Carnage, and he's setting out to discover just where the bonds of his abilities really lie. Pity those caught in his wake. The Marvel Universe is not ready for what Carnage is turning into." And Carnage #1, and it sounds like it's ongoing, is due out March 2nd. Obviously, I had some good and a couple of bad things to talk about this. First up, Ram V is a fantastic comic book writer. I do think he's a comic book writer on the rise, and I think he is destined for superstardom at DC or Marvel if he wants that. Of course, we're seeing a different track for a lot of the higher ceiling talents within comic books, and that is not with DC or Marvel. You build a little bit of a reputation there, and then you go do your better work somewhere else. I would not be surprised if Ram V does that. He seems like a very creative person that would like the creative freedom to create his own stuff. But he's a fantastic writer. And not only is Ram V a fantastic writer, he is a brilliant, and I'm not underselling that, horror writer. So it feels like this is going to be a good mix. He's better with horror themes and building tension than he is really with gore. So I think that could actually add a lot to a Carnage series, and not relying so much on the gore, and maybe building up a little bit of tension in other ways, and really add to the accoutrement that is associated with the Carnage series. The other good part is this is a 30th anniversary special. Certainly Carnage isn't as important as Spider-Man or Venom, but this is an important character. Carnage has had an interesting history within the Marvel Comics universe, and it is one of the cooler villains that they break out every once in a while. I don't think they've completely ruined Carnage at this point. They certainly have watered him down, but he's one of the few villains within their comic book universe that still has some legs to him as far as being threatening. I think that's special. So I think it's cool that they're going to celebrate the character. 30th anniversary seems important. So I think, yeah, it probably warrants a series to kind of celebrate the character, and whether or not we like the direction is another question. Now let's get into the bad. Does this need to be an ongoing series? I understand it's the 30th anniversary, and I'm sure Ram V has important or cool plans for the character, but Carnage is a villain. He's a serial killer, the symbiote and Cletus Cassidy. You know, what is he, just going to murder people in perpetuity? There's only so many of these type of stories that you can tell before the bad guy needs to be defeated. I think this would probably be better off in a 5 or 6 issue miniseries to tell the story. And that's just my opinion. I don't think this needs to be ongoing. I think that might actually do more harm than good. I do not want to see Carnage become an anti-hero like Venom. You made Venom an anti-hero, so you have Carnage kind of replace what Venom was. I don't want to see Carnage do the same thing. If that's what they do, I will sour on this very quickly. That could be another bad about this. The other bad thing is we've seen this happening a lot. And I'm not talking about, we're seeing a lot of mantle swaps as far as characters. This is obviously a little bit different. We've seen a lot of these characters that need hosts looking for and finding new hosts lately. We've certainly seen it in Venom, no longer with Eddie Brock, with Dylan Brock. We've seen it with Swamp Thing. It was with the Levi. I can't remember his last name now. No longer with the original Swamp Thing. We're seeing it with Iron Fist, and we've just witnessed it with the Infinity Stones as they become, sentient. It's kind of the same story over and over again. Like, how many times can you tell the exact same story? And Ranvi himself is the one that did the Swamp Thing story. So let's find something else to do with these characters that need hosts. They don't always need to just continuously find a new host. You can do something within the framework of what's already there. That's different than just this, because it seems like they're going down the same track over and over. Obviously, the stories are going to diverge a little bit here and there, but I can only read this shit so many times. That's my take. I'm definitely a customer for Carnage. Ranvi is one of my favorite writers, and I feel like this is going to be a good fit. Now, let's get to this last bit, and I think maybe this is going to be what's most exciting to some people. We are having an Alex Ross Fantastic Four graphic novel. So acclaimed painter Alex Ross is lending his writing and artistic chops to the upcoming original graphic novels starring the Fantastic Four, set to be released in August. This is going to be a 64-page graphic novel called Fantastic Four Full Circle, and it will be printed, and this is going to be cool, in an oversized prestige format similar to the original Marvel graphic novels lines of the 80s. So I think that's dope. If you're looking to collect this and maybe get it bricked, you're not going to be happy because you might not find something that fits that size. But I think it's kind of cool that they're paying an homage to what they were doing with the 80s. They did a lot of groundbreaking stuff in there. So many really, really cool new characters and first times happenings happened in those graphic novels line. Obviously that was the first time we ever saw the New Mutants, and there's so many things in there. We had the death of Captain Marvel, obviously. So those are really important. I like that Alex Ross is doing this. Obviously, he is a fan of history, so I'm not surprised he's the one doing it. As far as the story, we should be seeing Marvel's first family sent into the negative zone, a realm of dark energy and darker beings after a mysterious intruder invades the Baxter building. We've seen that story certainly within the pages of Fantastic Four in the past. I imagine there's more to it, but that's what they've given us so far. This is what Alex Ross himself had to say. This is the Fantastic Four story I've been wanting to tell for years, and visually, it is one of the greatest artistic experiments I have attempted. I'm excited to share this work with everyone as it unites the two great publishing forces of Marvel and Abrams Comic Arts in a bold new collaboration. Fantastic Four, as I mentioned before, Full Circle is due out in August. So I have some big strengths and some trepidations about this one. As far as the good, we do not get to see enough Alex Ross interior. So I find it refreshing that he's actually going to do the interiors of this book. It's going to look like $1 million. Alex Ross is essentially a legend at this point within the comic book industry. So anytime we get something of this magnitude with Alex Ross doing the interiors, it's a treat. It's something to celebrate. And it's something that, quite frankly, it should feel special, and it does. So I think that's really great to see him do the interior works. As far as a writer, Alex Ross has written or co-written some of the greatest comic stories in recent memory. Obviously, Kingdom Come with Mark Waid comes to mind. Justice, Batman War on Crime. He co-wrote that one as well. I think was that Paul Dini? I can't remember. I think it's Paul Dini. So he's got some real chops and acclaim as a comic book writer. So I have no concerns of Alex Ross writing this. In fact, Alex Ross, well, he certainly takes his own spin on these universes and these characters. You can see he has a real love for the history of all the characters he ends up working with. And he has a real hopeful nature about what he writes. There might be some bleak parts, but in the end, good always wins, and it always ends up, with a pretty hopeful ending, in my opinion. So I think this is going to be a good take for the Fantastic Four. We've had so much bad Fantastic Four recently that we could use some good. So I think Alex Ross on this team, that he's going to dive back into the past. He's going to celebrate Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's creation and do some good work. And it's going to be a welcome change for people that, quite frankly, don't like the direction and current state of Fantastic Four within the Marvel Comics universe. That is all good. Now, as far as the bad, people come into Alex Ross, especially, since he's one of the main cover artists out there, with a preconceived notion of what his art is. Photorealistic. That's kind of the vibe you get with it. And it's not always my favorite art. I'll be honest with that. Like, as glad as as happy as I am of him being an interior artist, I don't like the photorealistic take, especially on human characters. I like it on, like, the Thing would work or Hulk and stuff. But if you come into this graphic novel expecting photorealistic art from what we've seen from the cover as well as the interiors that they've previewed, you're not going to get that. It looks like Alex Ross is experimenting a little bit, and this art style would best be described as pop art, which I think works very well with the Fantastic Four, especially you go back to the Jack Kirby stuff where they're going into the negative zone and stuff like that. I think it's a really good choice, but there are going to be people that come into an Alex Ross illustrated book with preconceived notions of what it should look like, and this is not going to look like it from every indication that we have so far. So I do think that could turn some people off, or at least throw them off. So if you're really into that photorealistic look, you're not going to get that. Go look at the preview art and make sure it's for you, because I imagine it's going to be expensive. It's going to be bigger, 64 pages. It is Alex Ross, so it's not likely to be a cheap book. So that is your Marvel Comics news. Obviously, this weekend we will have the DC solicitations likely Saturday after the Comics Aficionados, and then the Marvel solicitations Sunday morning, first thing. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then I have a special interview for you guys tomorrow. I hope you're looking out for that as well. Thank you all very much.